What if one morning, you woke up and realized, no one truly cares? Not in the bitter, cynical way people throw around when they're hurt, but in a quiet, terrifyingly clear moment of understanding that the world doesn't stop spinning for your pain, your failures, or even your dreams. That no one is coming to save you, and maybe, just maybe, that's the best thing that could ever happen to you. Marcus stood at the edge of the city bridge, the early morning fog swallowing the skyline like a slow, silent tide. Cars hissed by below, their sound fading into the gray. The world looked indifferent, not cruel, not kind, just there. He had lost almost everything in the past year: his job, his marriage, his sense of direction. The kind of losses that make a man question if life is punishing him or simply ignoring him. He used to think people cared. When he succeeded, they cheered. When he failed, they disappeared. But in that loneliness, something unexpected began to grow, a strange kind of peace. A voice inside him whispered, "No one cares, Marcus. And that's your freedom." It didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like falling. He remembered his father's words, long before he died: "A man spends half his life trying to please others, and the other half trying to forget he ever did." Marcus never understood that until now. He realized how much of his life had been built around invisible audiences, what people thought of him, what they expected, how they would judge him. Every decision, every move, every silence was shaped by invisible eyes. And now, standing alone on that bridge, he finally saw how heavy that invisible weight had been. For years, he had mistaken attention for care, praise for love, pity for compassion, but people didn't truly care, not in the way he thought they did. They cared when it was convenient, when it mirrored their own fears, when it made them feel like better people. It wasn't their fault, it was human nature. Marcus looked out over the water, the current slow and endless. The world wasn't cruel, it was just uninterested. Like the ocean that swallows every tear without ever asking why. That realization didn't break him. It stripped him bare. Beneath all the noise, all the striving, all the begging for validation, there was just him. Naked, flawed, mortal, but still here. He remembered a line he had once read from Epictetus: "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace." Peace. The word felt foreign, almost sacred. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed. For the first time, the air didn't feel heavy. No one cared, and somehow, that made everything lighter. Because if no one cared, then he didn't have to keep performing. He didn't have to chase approval or avoid judgment. He didn't have to prove anything. He was free to begin again. He walked away from the bridge, slow steps echoing in the cold air. The city had woken up, vendors setting up their stalls, office lights flickering on, buses rumbling through the streets. Life went on. It always did, and that was the truth he had been avoiding. Life goes on, with or without you. For most people, this truth feels harsh. But for the Stoic mind, it's the beginning of strength. Because when you stop expecting the world to care, you stop giving it power over you. You start living for something internal, something untouchable. Marcus didn't smile, but something in his eyes shifted. A quiet defiance, a calm acceptance. No one cared, but for the first time, he did. And that's where transformation begins. The next morning, Marcus woke to silence, the kind that fills a room not with peace, but with questions. His phone was blank, no messages, no calls. For months, that emptiness would have haunted him, but today, it simply was. He sat by the window, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor, and thought about all the years he had begged for attention, from colleagues, from friends, from strangers online. Every word he'd written, every photo he'd shared, was a quiet cry: "See me. Validate me. Tell me I matter." But now, he saw the trap. When you depend on others to confirm your worth, you hand them the keys to your peace. You become a prisoner of every silence, every unreturned call, every indifferent glance. Marcus realized he had been carrying a weight that was never his to hold, the weight of wanting to be understood. He remembered something from Seneca: "He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." That line lingered like smoke in his chest. He thought of his failed marriage, the arguments, the unspoken disappointments, the endless attempts to fix what was never meant to last. He had loved her, yes. But he had also loved the idea of being loved back in the way he wanted. When that idea collapsed, so did he. It wasn't love that destroyed him, it was expectation. The Stoics had always warned of this, that pain doesn't come from what happens to us, but from our judgment of it. And for years, Marcus had been judging everything, people, moments, even himself, against impossible standards. Now, as he sat in that quiet apartment, he began to let those judgments fade. He asked himself, what if I stopped expecting anyone to understand me? What if I simply did what I must, without needing applause or pity? The thought scared him. It felt like stepping off a cliff into fog. But maybe, that's what true detachment was, walking through life unchained from its rewards. Later that day, he went outside. The world looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. He noticed things he had long ignored: the roughness of the pavement, the smell of dust after passing cars, the indifferent faces of strangers. Each person seemed locked in their own storm, their own invisible war. No one was watching him. No one cared what he looked like or what thoughts weighed on his mind. And somehow, that realization was beautiful. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel small. He felt equal, just another soul among millions, each carrying their unseen burdens. He stopped by a small cafe where he used to meet his old friends. The same waiter greeted him, polite, distant. No one asked where he'd been. No one noticed the quiet in his voice. And that's when he truly understood. Life doesn't pause for your pain, and that's not cruelty, that's nature. You can fight it and drown, or you can accept it and learn to float. As he sipped his coffee, he wrote something in his notebook. When you stop expecting the world to care, you begin to care for yourself. It wasn't arrogance, it was liberation. He realized that he could only control three things: his thoughts, his actions, and his reactions. Everything else, people, fate, time, would move however they pleased. That was the essence of Stoicism: control the inner world, accept the outer one. He closed his notebook and looked around. A couple argued in the corner. A man scrolled endlessly on his phone. A child spilled his drink and burst into tears. The cafe buzzed with tiny human dramas, each one, to its owner, a universe of meaning. But to the world, they were ripples in an infinite ocean. Marcus smiled faintly. He understood now that the universe owed him nothing, not fairness, not comfort, not explanation. And the moment he stopped demanding those things, he felt something unexpected: strength. Because once you accept that no one owes you care, you start to build your own. That night, as the city dimmed and the hum of life softened into silence, Marcus whispered to himself, I can't control who cares. But I can control what I become. And with that, the second layer of his transformation began. It's easy to feel wise in silence. It's easy to feel unshakable when life stands still. But the world never stays still for long, and neither did Marcus's peace. 2 weeks after his quiet revelation, life tested him. He returned to his old office to collect a few documents left behind after his resignation. The building was the same: glass walls, buzzing lights, and faces that once smiled at him out of habit. Only now, those faces didn't even turn his way. He wasn't part of their world anymore. As he entered the elevator, he heard laughter echoing from down the hall, familiar voices. His former team, they were celebrating a new project. A project he had conceived, nurtured, and fought for before leaving. The one that got him fired when he challenged management's direction. And now, there it was, alive, successful, praised, without him. Something deep in his chest stirred. Not anger at them, but an old ache. That human voice that whispers, they moved on without you. You were replaceable. He stood in silence, gripping the folder in his hand. The elevator doors closed, and his reflection stared back, calm eyes, controlled breath. But inside, a storm began to form. This is the test, he thought. This is where philosophy either breathes or dies. He remembered another line from Marcus Aurelius. When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. He inhaled deeply. The anger was there, sharp, alive, but now, he didn't fight it. He observed it, watched it unfold like a fire that could only burn if he fed it. In that moment, he saw clearly. He had spent years seeking recognition, thinking it would complete him. But recognition had never been proof of worth, only reflection of timing, politics, and chance. He had mistaken noise for meaning. He walked out of the building without saying a word. The city air hit him like a baptism. Cold, cleansing, real. For the first time, he didn't feel defeated by exclusion, he felt purified by it. No applause, no validation, just him, walking alone, free. That night, he returned home to find a message from his ex-wife. Short, sharp, casual. I heard about your old company's success. You must be proud, right? A flicker of irony twisted through him. He could almost hear the undertone, the quiet test of ego. The part of her that once knew how deeply he tied his worth to being right, being recognized. He typed a reply, paused, then deleted it. Instead, he wrote something else. I'm happy to see things moving forward. That's what matters. He sent it and closed the phone. Not because he didn't care, but because caring didn't mean owning. For the first time, he didn't need to win the moment. That night, he sat on the balcony, watching the distant lights shimmer like quiet souls. He thought about how often people confuse control with peace. But control is temporary, peace is perspective. He realized that no one's approval, no one's betrayal, no one's silence could take from him what was now internal, his understanding. Every person he had once tried to please was just another traveler on their own path, carrying their own illusions of importance. Everyone was fighting something unseen, just as he once did. He felt no anger toward them anymore. Only distance, not the kind that separates, the kind that frees. He whispered into the night, you don't need to be seen to exist. You don't need to be loved to have value. You don't need to win to have peace. The words didn't sound like philosophy anymore, they sounded like truth. He thought of the Stoics again, how they lived and died unknown, their wisdom only recognized centuries later. None of them sought fame, they sought mastery over themselves. And that was the mastery Marcus now tasted, in small, fleeting breaths. The world hadn't changed, people were still indifferent, unpredictable, self-centered. But his relationship to that indifference had transformed. He no longer saw the world as cruel. He saw it as neutral, a vast stage where every soul performs its tiny act before fading into silence. And in that silence, he finally found belonging. Because to accept that no one cares is not to fall into despair, it's to see clearly that life was never about being noticed. It was about noticing. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and smiled faintly. The test had come, and he had passed it not with resistance, but with understanding. He was no longer the man who demanded to be seen. He was the man who had learned to see. And somewhere deep within that calm, something powerful began to awaken, not pride, not joy, but purpose. The following months unfolded like slow fire, quiet on the surface, but burning underneath. Marcus had stopped seeking validation, and in doing so, he found something rarer, clarity. He took a small job at a repair shop, not glamorous, not important. He fixed clocks, radios, old watches that people had long forgotten how to repair. There was something poetic about restoring things that no longer mattered to anyone else. Every morning, he walked to work through crowded streets filled with people chasing something, money, attention, purpose. He didn't judge them, he simply observed, like a man watching a storm from behind glass. For the first time, he moved through life without resistance. He had no grand plan, no need to prove, no hunger to be admired. And yet, strangely, people began to notice him more than ever. The owner of the shop admired his calm. Customers started requesting him by name. A local journalist even wrote a short piece about the quiet repairman who listened more than he spoke. Irony at its purest form. The man who stopped trying to be seen was now the one others could not ignore. But Marcus didn't cling to it. He understood what it was, another illusion. Fame and failure were made of the same dust. He remembered Epictetus again. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And so he reacted with stillness. One afternoon, while working on an old wristwatch, his former colleague entered the shop, a face from his past, the one who had betrayed his trust during that company fallout. The man smiled awkwardly, unsure how to begin. I heard you're fixing clocks now, he said, half in jest, half in discomfort. Marcus nodded, wiping the dust from his hands. Time's a good teacher, he said quietly. The man hesitated, then muttered, you know, I didn't mean for things to go that way. Marcus raised his hand, not in anger, but in peace. You don't owe me an explanation, he said. We both did what we thought was right at the time. The man blinked, surprised. You're not angry. Anger is like holding a burning coal, Marcus said, waiting to throw it, but the only one burned is the hand that holds it. For a moment, the air between them softened. The man nodded slowly, almost humbled, and left without another word. Marcus returned to his work. His hands moved with precision, his heart unmoved by pride. Because he understood now, forgiveness wasn't about the other person, it was about refusing to carry poison. That evening, as he closed the shop, he looked at the city again, its noise, its rush, its restless energy. He once belonged to that chaos. Now, he walked through it like a man untouched by weather. He wasn't numb, he was free. In the following days, life continued to test him. An unexpected bill, a rude customer, a friend who disappeared without a word. But each test met the same response: calm observation, gentle acceptance, silent strength. And with each trial, something inside him hardened, not like stone, but like tempered steel. He began journaling again, not for an audience, but for himself. In one entry, he wrote, "The world doesn't owe me kindness, but I owe myself composure." He realized that peace is not found in isolation, but in discipline. It's not that emotions disappear, they simply stop ruling you. Marcus had become what the Stoics called apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but mastery over it. He found joy in small things: the rhythm of a pendulum, the smell of rain on metal roofs, the simplicity of completing what he started. He no longer needed to be the center of anyone's story. He was content being the silent witness of his own. But the true proof of his transformation came one night, when a fire broke out in the building next to his shop. Chaos exploded: shouting, running, panic. People rushed to save what they owned. Marcus moved calmly, helping the elderly, guiding children, steady, unflinching amidst the flames. Later, when the fire was out and everyone safe, someone asked him, "How were you so calm? Weren't you scared?" He smiled faintly. "Of course I was scared," he said. "But fear is just a guest. I choose how long it stays." That was the moment people realized, his calm wasn't passivity. It was power. Marcus walked home that night, the smell of smoke still clinging to his clothes, and looked up at the stars. He thought of his old life, all the wasted energy trying to control what was never his to control. Now he understood. Freedom isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the absence of unnecessary suffering. And suffering ends the moment you accept that no one, and nothing, is responsible for your peace but you. He exhaled into the cold night, whispering the truth that had taken him a lifetime to earn. When you stop needing the world to care, you finally start living in it. Weeks passed. The rhythm of life continued, steady, unremarkable, unending. The city moved, people hurried, time carried everything forward like a great indifferent river. Marcus had changed, but the world hadn't. It didn't need to. He sat one evening by the riverbank, the same one he once stood over in despair months ago. Back then, he had looked into those waters searching for meaning, for a reason to keep going. Now, he looked again, not to find anything, but simply to see. The sun was sinking into gold, scattering light across the surface like broken glass. He watched it quietly, hands folded, breathing slow and steady. He thought of all the people who had passed through his life, the ones who had loved him, the ones who had left, the ones who never saw him at all. And instead of bitterness, he felt gratitude. Each of them had played their part in stripping him bare, until only truth remained. He whispered softly to himself, "No one owes you anything. Not love, not fairness, not understanding. And that's why everything you receive, even a small kindness, is a gift." He smiled faintly. For the first time, that sentence didn't feel sad. It felt like peace. Because he finally understood. The world's indifference was not an insult, it was a mirror. It showed him that everything he sought outside was already within him: stability, dignity, purpose. He remembered what Epictetus had written centuries ago: "What disturbs men's minds is not events, but their judgments concerning events." It wasn't the loneliness that had hurt him. It was the belief that loneliness was wrong. It wasn't loss that broke him. It was the illusion that he had control. Once he released those illusions, he stopped drowning. He took out his notebook, the same one he had carried since that morning on the bridge, and wrote his final line. When you accept that no one cares, you begin to care correctly, not for how the world sees you, but for how you meet the world. He closed it gently and watched the sun disappear behind the horizon. The day ended, as all days do, without ceremony. No applause, no tragedy, just silence, and the quiet continuation of things. And that was enough. Marcus stood and began to walk home. His steps were slow, but certain, the pace of a man who no longer rushed to prove, no longer fled from pain, no longer waited for the world to notice. He no longer needed to be understood. He no longer needed to be loved. He no longer needed to be remembered. Because true peace, he had learned, is not found in being cared for, but in caring less about what cannot be controlled. As he turned the final corner, the city lights blinked on, one by one, like quiet affirmations of life's endless motion. Marcus whispered to the night, "I am here, that is enough." And in that whisper, there was everything: surrender, strength, and the timeless calm of a man who had finally made peace with an uncaring world.